Welcome back. Thank you once again for hanging out with us. This is the one and only IT in the D show. I am your host, Bob Waltonspiel, hanging out with co-host, producer extraordinaire, Randy Walker. Guest this week, Jacob Ennis. He is with the Center for Simulation and Innovation. Again, one of the longest URLs from a website we've ever seen in our lives. But that's all right. He's actually, this is a really cool story about developing AR and VR technologies for training purposes. First time we've ever had something like this on the show, so I'm super intrigued on digging in more. You can find us online, itinthed.com. Do us a favor, give us a like on the socials, subscribe to us everywhere fine podcasts are sold. Don't forget meetup.com/IT-in-the-D, the 21st. That's tonight. If you're listening to this live, we will be at Nancy Whiskey's for the final end of summer Oktoberfest party at Nancy Whiskey's. Show up. Hopefully we can get on the patio for once, since we haven't the last two. That was the whole intent of going there, was sitting on the patio, and we've been inside. Either way, we're going to have a good time. No cover, no speakers, just a bunch of
I don't think there's rain in the forecast this Thursday.
Is there rain? There's always going to be.
I don't think there is.
Oh, if we have an event, there's going to be rain. Jacob, how they treating you, bud?
It's been good. I've been enjoying getting into the networking groups around the Detroit area. Hanging out, meeting a lot of new people, getting really into the technology scene, learning a lot about all sorts of different technologies, and learning about how bizarre the tech world actually is the more that I get into like the social aspect of it.
The more simple or the more bizarre? Because as far like we always get into these conversations of it's a lot, it's so much noise. It's really hard to discern around it. There's so many vendors. There's so much stuff that the people are getting thrown at, and at the end of the day, this was supposed to make our lives easier, and I think it's become more complex than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's it's interesting because, and I don't want to like sound critical of the tech scene, but I feel like whenever I go to like trade shows or things for technology, and I worked IT in college for a long time, and then I transitioned to teaching for 5 years, and now I'm doing this sales job for the AR and VR company, and so I'm at these networking events and these big trade shows all the time for technology, and it seems like while it'll be like the IT director for a huge company, like major shoe companies, things like that, and these it seems like a lot of these guys they'll know like what they have to do in order to keep their stuff running, but as soon as there's any sort of technology that's just a little bit outside of their sphere, their minds are like totally blown by it. Like all these people at these trade shows have never seen augmented reality before on their phone, and it's like, I mean, I'm glad they're excited about it. Like, it's really cool to show them something that's new to them, but like, have you not used Snapchat before?
Right. We had actually, Randy, what is this, about 100 episodes ago or so? This is a few years ago, pre-COVID, I think. Didn't we have an augmented reality like kids book?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, but my thing with the trade shows is, Jacob, is it's a feature benefit show. Look at me, look at my green blinking lights, look at my features and benefits, look at my features and benefits. And nobody, I mean, granted, it's hard to give do sales properly for 1,000 different customers that have different needs, but it's like demo, like here's a pen, like, and those companies spend just a crazy amount of money to get floor space at these things. Dreamforce.
Oh yeah.
Salesforce Dreamforce just happened. I can't even imagine the money that got dropped in that event.
And it's the last one that I was at was there were probably maybe 8 or 9, and they were all lined up right next to each other, like software security firms, all right next to each other. It was a huge portion of the event space was dedicated just to software security firms, and I kind of love this trend, because software security firms have like nothing cool to show people. Like they can convince you that they can offer better security than the guy who's sitting next to them, sure. But when we've got like virtual reality headsets sitting at our table, and we've got, little demos and stuff, and we're working, people are making their own avatars and they're showing up on business cards, like people tend to gravitate more towards our stuff than other people's stuff, because we have that like wow factor, which is fun. Like that's part of working in AR and VR. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Like the software security vendors is, look at my dashboard. No, look at my dashboard. Look at my dashboard. No, look at my dashboard. Mm-hmm. And you never really get into like, well, what do you actually do? Well, just look at my dashboard. So it's interesting with like I said, we had an AR book company. It had to have been 4 years ago. Randy's going to look it up. It was probably
I looked it up. It was 20. Oh shoot, where was it? It was, oh, come on. 2016, August 2016.
So it was a long time ago, 7 years ago.
Spellbound.
Mm-hmm.
Spellbound.
And I'm shocked that it hasn't been more normal. And in the building that I work at down in Campus Martius, there's actually an immersive art gallery that just opened up where you come in and scan the QR code for the app, and then all the art comes to life. And I'm shocked this hasn't been more of a thing. So I guess, how did you get into this world? I know you started as a teacher. We'll get into that later. But just the whole augmented, AR and VR, at least especially for training. How'd you get into this space?
Yeah, it's a fun little story. So I worked like I said before, I worked in IT through college as a student worker, and I did that for 4 years. And my boss at the time, who was the director of IT services at Concordia University, Ann Arbor, which is the little tiny university right next to U of M, he was given a grant last year in order to start this company. And so he knew that I was a teacher. He knew me from working with him for a long time, and he knew that I was super into virtual reality as a hobby. Like, I love doing virtual reality stuff. I like playing the games. I like seeing the immersion of it. I do all the racing sim stuff with it. So big into virtual reality. So he calls me up and he says, hey, let's get lunch sometime, and we can kind of talk about how you see virtual reality fitting into education. Where do you think we could take virtual reality or augmented reality and convince teachers to use it in the classroom without it becoming intimidating? And so we have this lunch. The conversation goes really well, and I kind of let it slip while I'm there that I'm kind of on the lookout for a different career path. That teaching was just becoming really stressful. The same things you guys have probably heard from 1,000 other teachers: high stress, difficulty working with kids who have socialization over the COVID years wasn't happening, so they don't have respect for each other or their teachers like students at that age typically would. And on top of that, the salary. And so it's just all that stuff going on. So I was considering a different career option, and fast forward a couple months, and I'm working in the office with him.
Nice. So what did I guess with the training part, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it. What's the difference between standing at a whiteboard or talking to somebody and actually doing, putting on the goggles, doing VR? I guess for the layman's, what's the difference between AR and VR? Because I know I've seen AR demos, but I guess, to explain to someone that hasn't, what would you say is AR to I know you said it could confuse all the time with AI. Let's talk about that too. But like, what would you say, what is AR? What's your typical answer?
Yeah. Okay. So this is always the beginning. Any presentation that I end up doing for people always has the difference between AR and VR on it as like the first slide, because that's typically the thing that gets asked first. Really simple. Augmented reality is a digital layer on top of the physical world. So it's usually something that's either done through a camera, most often, like with Snapchat filters on your phone, or in a more complicated sense, if you have the hardware for it, like the HoloLens, the Microsoft HoloLens, where it sort of projects an image into these glasses that you can see through, so you can see the world, but you see that projected image like on top of it. And so augmented reality is a digital overlay on top of the physical world, while virtual reality is an entirely virtual environment.
Got it. I guess I don't see what the purpose is of AR. I've seen it done multiple times. Maybe that's why it hasn't took off. But what's generally I like it for the kids book aspect. Your books kind of come to life and you can add motion and kind of enter a new dimension. But like, what are some of the use cases on why AR would be used?
Yeah, I think actually what is the purpose of AR is a great question, because it's a relatively new technology, and I think that there's a lot of potential for AR that people haven't found. And so a lot of the augmented reality that they see is like really gimmicky stuff. Like I just said before, Snapchat filters or things like that. And they're fun, they're good entertainment, but there's not like a logical, practical use there. So some examples of augmented reality in a more logical sense that we've been working on. We have textbooks that, a student can open the textbook, like a high school or college student, point their phone at a QR code inside of the textbook, and a 3D model comes up through their camera on top of the textbook over the book about whatever they're reading about. And so if they're reading about Stonehenge, a 3D model of Stonehenge comes up, and they can manipulate it with their finger. They can touch it, they can move it around, they can add or remove different things from it. They can take a little quiz on the side digitally and have the results sent to their teacher, et cetera, and so forth. And it sort of gives them that visual learning experience without breaking the connection to the textbook.
See, now are you only doing, that I understand that application. I almost now, my brain's kind of churning, and I'm thinking about for 100 other applications. Like right now we're doing an AI project to basically put an entire repair manual in basically the hands of the repair people, so they can, on the fly, they can say, hey, how do I fix blah, blah, blah. And then it says, here's 3 possible ways to fix it, like right on the fly, like instantaneous. They don't have to look it up. They don't have to, and that's a phenomenal use case for AI. But for AR, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, hey, I have this thingamajiggle and it's broken, and you can put an overlay. I'm just thinking out loud. Is that, stop me if they're already doing this, but I'm just thinking of other practical applications to use AR. Because like I said, I thought it should have been bigger than it is today. What are some of the other areas that it's being used other than in the textbook?
So another thing that we've been looking at is medical field usage, especially when it comes to like medical students and ways to kind of train medical students in a way that's a little more directed. So for example, like imagine a group of medical students doing a cadaver lab, and they have HoloLens, Microsoft HoloLens, or preferably Apple Vision Pro units on, and they can see the body, and they're working with the body, but there's a digital overlay that gives them progressive information as they continue this lab, and that information can be edited or changed by the teacher or by the professor.
So it's almost like RoboCop eyes. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but yeah, it's just, you get the little overlay of here,
No,
this is
exactly.
Yeah.
I was thinking
RoboCop
Jarvis,
AR.
but
Jarvis, yeah, fine, either one. I'm just thinking out of the lens of RoboCop, and he's like, hey, this is, targeting and, distance and all that stuff. But no, so what can they do with that? Is it for educational, or is it instructional as well? Like, kind of pointing out, kind of like with RoboCop lens, like, hey, this is the heart, and here's the the 4 ventricles. You know what I'm saying? Like, how deep does it go into like the explanations, or is it just kind of pointing things out? I guess I'm trying to envision what it looks like.
And so the idea here, and this is not a project that we have in development yet. This is something that we're working on the ideation phase for. And there are we've done kind of a wide variety of virtual reality or augmented reality like training materials. This one, in order to recognize all the different parts of the cadaver and things like that, would be a pretty hefty project. Like this one is a little bit of that kind of idea is a little bit of a pipe dream project, but the idea and the technology does exist. Like this could be built. It just will take significant effort. Is that you would have, an overlay on top of this cadaver that could point things out, like here's this thing or here's that thing. But realistically, if you're a medical student doing a cadaver lab, you should probably know where the heart is,
Right.
And so I think a lot of it would be specific notation by the professor, specific things that the ways for it to be instructional, so that instead of having to say, hey, remember to do this to this thing, there's a there's a graphic that shows what they're supposed to do, and there's explanation as they go further on to continue their lab more smoothly.
Or maybe here's the heart, but here's why this particular cadaver died, this flaw or something that isn't in
exactly,
heart,
and it could outline things like that. And now that's actually an interesting use case if you wanted to have that sort of thing where, or even like a doctor or a surgeon could be wearing a HoloLens and see, looking at a patient, a living patient who has some sort of a wound or whatever. If you combine artificial intelligence that could recognize these wounds and the images of them with augmented reality that could overlay that information on top of a HoloLens, you've got more effective surgeons.
So something that an everyday person might experience, I'm going off your website, is like the museum sim.
Yeah.
Where you're going through a museum and getting more information about the exhibits.
Yeah, and this museum sim is definitely that's something that we're already working with. We've already got some clients for Museum Sim. And the idea with Museum Sim is that you can go into any sort of space where information is being displayed, something like a museum or like a trade show or maybe even a classroom and art gallery. And you walk through and there would be QR codes on the, on the walls or on the posters or on the paintings or on the exhibits. And then somebody could scan it with their phone, point their phone at the at this exhibit, whatever it is that's being shown, and it would add whatever type of information that the client would want to see there. So it could add, we're doing one that has a 3D version of, we're doing called the Economist Hall of Fame. And there's all these different economists, and they're trying to display all this information about them. So the economist, walks out of the exhibit on the phone and tells you about themselves instead of just having to read a little plaque about it.
It makes it way more interactive and compelling than just looking at a static
object.
Right.
It takes it from something that a standard way to learn, which isn't bad, to an experience, to something that people might remember a little better.
Now I'm looking at one of your products, and considering I just watched a whole lot of NFL yesterday, saw a few of these, but it's a concussion sim. Like, what? I guess, are you testing for concussions? Talk to me about this application.
Yeah. Concussion sim was the first product that was developed by CSI. And so the idea of concussion sim is that we took a look at a lot of different, especially like youth programs for athletics, and realized that their concussion training software, like what they use in order to train their coaches or train the on-field personnel for recognize a concussion, is really, really lackluster. Like it's usually not super effective. And actually, it just happened to one of my cousins. Kids will go out on the field, they'll hit their head, and the coach will send them right back out to do it again. And so
it depends, though. I had a daughter that had 2 pretty severe concussions. Mm-hmm. The protocol's pretty insane. We had stop the game hospital both times.
That's very good.
Well, this was also club soccer, and there was trainers on the field, and a little bit different.
Yes, that is, and there are a lot of places who do take it very, very seriously. There are also a lot that don't always. And so we were hoping to kind of try to create a concussion training software simulation where people who will be on the field and who have to be trained to recognize those concussions have to actually do it. Like, instead of just reading about it and taking a quiz, they see an injury happen to a digital player, and then they have to make the correct decisions in a short amount of time in order to, give the right call for what that they should do for that student or that kid or that person.
Yeah, because it was pretty simplistic. It was, are you nauseous? Are you dizzy?
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much, it was basic,
right.
Look to the left, kind of like the old DUI thing. Look to the left, look, follow my finger.
Yeah, see if the pupils dilate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through that 2.5 times. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So now when you're looking, now VR now, there's a use case that I thought was going to boom, and it hasn't. Or maybe it has, and I'm just not following it close enough. But the whole front row ticket thing. They were supposed to be like, hey, it was like $100, and you could sit front row at Elton John. You could sit courtside for a Lakers game. You could be, 50-yard line, 5th row for a football game. And, they were setting up all these cameras, and I haven't seen it since. I don't know if licensing got in the way or if they wanted to sell physical tickets. But I thought that would have been one of the coolest things to be able to, for VR. Is that stopped? Have you followed it? Is it happening today?
So I have followed this a little bit, and I know it picked up a little bit because Meta put in like a lot of effort in order to make this a thing. Once the Quest units, especially the Quest 2, once people started buying those like crazy, and it became more of a household item, there was a series of concerts that they tried to do to have people pay for a small fee and put the headset on, and they'd have like a good seat at the concert or whatever it be. But no, it really hasn't picked up, the way that I think a lot of people expected it to. Maybe there's a couple of reasons for it. I think the resolution on those headsets and the resolution of like the 360 cameras that exist right now, and the audio quality that comes through an inexpensive VR headset maybe just aren't at that quality yet where people want to spend a decent amount of money to, experience a concert that way.
Right.
And then I think also on top of that, it's sort of like people don't feel like they're there because in the end they still are putting on a headset, and it's definitely closer than watching it on TV.
I'm going to be honest with you. At my age, I bought Duran Duran tickets because that's my wife's favorite band, and I bought main floor, like 10th row center. And I was just like, I don't feel like going. Go with your sister. Go with your friend. And I'm like, I would like, to me it'd be much more peaceful. It's funny how I age. I don't want to go to a Lions game anymore. I just rather watch it on my. I don't even want to go to my buddy's house. I want to just sit on my chair and watch my damn game. So that's what I'm thinking. VR, has the jumping in did the metaverse happen too early? Is it dead? Because like I kind of want to understand what they tried to do, but there's been way too many weird movies to and it was already being done with Second Life anyway. What's the update on that thing?
So metaverse is, as far as I can tell, metaverse is basically dead in the water. And I think the question that you asked is like, what was metaverse supposed to do? Like, I think that was the question that Meta should have answered before they started developing metaverse, because at least in my, like, as someone who's been a VR hobbyist for a long time and now works at least in some capacity in the industry, I'll go back and I'll watch the commercials they were doing for metaverse, and I still can't really figure out exactly what it was that they were trying to sell. Like some sort of a social space, massive online role-playing game, but you're role-playing yourself sort of deal where it was
kind of like the Nintendo Wii. It was the Nintendo Wii before you played a game. You ran in this little world and you talked. There was people that were running with you, and you're like, oh hey, and that was it. Like, and then I saw Metaverse and I go, that's all it is. Like, yeah,
and they weren't even close to being the first to do it either.
No,
VR chat came out for free way before that and got massively popular with a lot of really weird people. And
way back in early 2000s, I was on there for a while.
What is that?
3D virtual world before Second Life.
Oh,
wow, before like Second Life.
2003, I think.
I was on Club
Diablo
Penguin.
So I keep seeing or hearing with the medical use cases for VR. And they keep talking about like the world-renowned surgeon is sitting in California and you need surgery on your knee, and there's a Boston Scientific robot, or maybe it's another, and then basically this doctor's playing, basically a Zoom call with your surgery. Does anyone trust that? Will anyone ever trust that?
I guess if I were in the situation where it's like either you get this heart transplant from a doctor who's, 1,000 miles away, or you die, I'm letting the robot do the work, So I think it's one of those things like self-driving cars where it's scary, but as the technology improves, people may eventually warm up to it.
I'm not warming up to self-driving cars. We've talked about this ad nauseum on this show. That's one thing that's not going to happen.
I'm not ready for those either. I don't know if I think they're dangerous. I just don't want to give up like the enjoyment and personal control of driving my own car.
I've driven to Chicago already like 3 times this year. Like I wouldn't mind just kicking back, but there's got to be either all of them have to be on it at the same time or none of them have to.
I think you're right.
We get into a whole bunch of arguments too about like, insurance, and if there's no more accidents, what's going to happen to the insurance industry? And coders have to do it. We don't trust coders. It's kind of we get into a whole get deep on all this stuff. I don't trust coders, so there's no way I'm trusting. Basically my life. I'm going 80 miles an hour. I guess in the medical world with VR, is there anything today that's being done on the normal? Is it more just for a training thing? Like, is it easier? Obviously, it's easier to train in VR than it is flying everyone out in person, or cheaper.
Right.
Is that the number one use case for VR training? Is it just one to many? It's a lot easier.
So that is one of the major benefits of using VR training, is that it's more cost effective in the long run to train people over virtual reality. But I don't, especially as someone who used to teach, I don't like to see virtual reality as a replacement for live teaching. Like, it doesn't matter how much technology we've got. I think COVID showed us that, like, in order for education to be truly effective, there needs to be in-person actual teaching going on. So the way that we approach virtual reality in education and training is as a more highly interactive supplement to what's already happening inside of the classroom. A way to do things that would typically be done in a very simple or boring manner in a way that keeps kids more interested and helps them remember.
Now, I guess I'm going to be a cynic a little bit. Is it getting the hands-on experience more valuable? I guess where does that start and stop? So,
and that kind of gets into a lot of educational research that's been done throughout the years, and like educational theorists and things like that. And I learned all about this in college. I'm a little bit rustier on it now. But there have been a lot of studies done that kinesthetic, which is learning that involves physical movement, is the type of learning that stays in memory the longest for the most amount of people. And if you can combine that with auditory and visual learning, which are also done through virtual reality, then you're kind of hitting all of the three major, like, learning, there's a word for it. Anyway, you're hitting all three of the major ways that people can typically learn. And then it gives an overall better chance of a student being able to keep that in their memory.
See, I always thought this was pre-Peloton existing. I thought a VR, the best VR thing or use case would be for stationary bikes or treadmills that you can run anywhere in the world. I want to jog around in some island. I want to go to Rome. I want to go to, you know what I mean? And basically with Google Earth, you can basically transform. But now they kind of have it on a screen. Do they do that in VR now?
2D. They don't. And I feel the same way that you do about it, that I think it would be really, really super cool to do. And I think the reason that this hasn't been done yet is, like, purely safety. And I think that, like, clever engineering, both software and hardware engineering, could take a lot of those safety concerns away. But, like, if I'm running on a treadmill and can't see the treadmill, that is a little scary. Stationary bike would be better.
Right. That still would be cool, though. I still want to do that.
So do I.
I could run around Guam. Actually, I wouldn't run, but isn't Guam like 1 square mile, Randy? I don't know any better. Randy?
I was going to say, we should probably talk about the hardware behind this a little bit. So you've mentioned a HoloLens a few times. Mm-hmm. I assume that's what you're using for your current demos and current use cases?
For some of them. Museum Sim mostly uses HoloLens because typically the types of events and places that would integrate that, they can provide HoloLenses to the people who are going to be seeing the experience. So I have mentioned the HoloLens. I don't necessarily like the HoloLens. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just out of date. The hardware that it runs on is very low power compared to what could be available today, and the field of view is really low. Like, it's a very good proof of concept for what AR could be like. It's the HoloLens as it exists right now kind of reminds me of the Oculus Rift development kits from way back in the day, like 2013, 2014, where it was like, whoa, this is a really super cool technology, but it's like, obviously the hardware isn't there yet. And so when it comes to augmented reality headsets that you physically put on your head, the hardware is not totally there yet. And the Apple Vision Pro could change that, but nobody can get their hands on it yet.
Excited for that one.
Yes, we're super excited about it, but it'll be a little while until we can get our hands on any Vision Pro units, unfortunately.
For sure. I think they said what, early 2024?
Yeah, that's
whatever that means.
That right, exactly. That's the projected, possible time that people will be able to start to buy them, and then we're all excited to tinker with it, so we'll see how it goes.
So what about idiots like me that instantly get seasick when I put on a VR lens? I bought an Oculus for my daughter Christmas a couple years ago. Tried to play a game, and I was like, instantly, I'm sick. I don't feel good.
Oh yeah,
I ripped it off. What's is there anything that can be done for that?
So that's a super common thing. A lot of people have, especially people who are like there's age brackets, and the higher you get up on the age bracket, the more likely you are to experience like virtual reality sickness, as well as a bunch of other things. But it's a problem. It's something that if someone is dedicated to like really enjoying virtual reality, it can be overcome. Like by doing small amounts of virtual reality every day or whatever, like you people can eventually train their body. Yeah, no, actually you could, and it would help if you took Dramamine. But people will eventually kind of make their brain, if they're really into it, make their brain used to it, and they won't get sick anymore. But there are a couple of things that really affect the reason why people get like seasick feeling in virtual reality, and it's kind of along the same lines as like Uncanny Valley, where you'll see something that sort of looks like a person but isn't quite a person, and it like freaks you out because it's wrong somehow. Your brain recognizes subconsciously that this isn't real, but it's like close to real, and so you start to feel sick. Higher refresh rates and higher frame rates in software help a lot. Better field of view, and then there's some like interesting software tweaks that people came up with, like adding a virtual nose, because your eyes are always used to looking at your nose all the time and your brain just blocks it out. Adding a virtual nose helped people not get sick because it was more real to their subconscious brain.
Someone had a meeting and said we need to add a virtual nose, and someone approved it, and it actually worked. So that's the stuff I'm
and now it's in like every VR game. Like I'll boot up a VR game, and it's like you can turn an on and off virtual nose.
Wow.
Yeah, it's super crazy.
No doubt. So you were in we were talking before the show, and being a teacher, and you were kind of ranting a little bit about the technology for educators, and I kind of got on a little rant too, because they buy the kids stuff that isn't necessary for educating. What other than like, I guess what was your biggest issue with the technology world for teachers and for students alike?
So yeah, the technology world in education, and this, I think it goes even wider than technology, where it's the people who are making the technology for education, as well as a lot of the people who make the standards and the curriculums and the rules for education are not actually involved in education. Like none of these, or not none, very few of these people who are building software or building hardware for education are teachers. A lot of them, they're marketing ideas made up by people who want to sell a flashy thing. Isn't
it also outdated by 18 months the day it gets released?
Oh yeah,
I'm thinking any curriculum you would write today.
Mm-hmm.
That's why my daughter's at Michigan State. I think she had to buy. I don't even think she bought a book.
Yeah.
Whereas like $1,000 of books when back when I went. So I think they're getting where it's more interactive, and it's more but I think that's the biggest thing is they're forced to do this curriculum that just completely out of date.
Yeah, and it's a total mess. It really is. And then so there'll be these things where like, all right, all of the students in your school, and maybe it'll be a government grant or something like that a school gets, and it's like, okay, cool. All of the students in your school can now have iPads or can now have access to 3D printers, and it's like, that's really awesome. Like that can be used as great technology, but none of these teachers have been briefed on how to use them. None of the staff at the school has had any ideas on how to use them. So all these iPads roll up because of a grant, and then the principal's got to figure out, okay, what app should I put on this so the students can use them for something and we can get another grant next year? Like and it keeps happening over and over like that instead of the technology being purposeful. And
I guess it's one of the things too. It's like, us as parents, and I got 3 kids that, going through public school, you sign these millages, they get these grants, and they get these, each kid gets $1,000 iPad, and it turns into a, internet browser and download a couple games on it, and it's just like, well, what purpose did that serve other than announcing at a school board meeting we got iPads and everybody goes yay,
right? Yeah, and that is the purpose half of the time,
right? Politics, always back to politics,
in everything.
So why does AR get confused with AI? We'll end with this thing, like, you'll get asked like, oh, I'm in AR, and they're like, oh, ChatGPT, cool, like it's got to drive you nuts. But I just don't know why. Is it so, like, because I know that, like, it's been it could not be
they
more
both start
different.
with A, duh.
No, literally, that's it. Like, like, I think you hit the nail on the head there. So many people are like, AR. Oh wait, AR and AI is not the same thing. Like, they hear the A, and so that's kind of what they assume. And it's because AI is already, especially when I'm going to networking events, tech events, AI is already on every single person's mind there. It's the big thing. And so when I say AR, I think their brains just hear AI. And they're just like, okay, cool. So what are you doing with generative networks? And we're like, well, we could use them to make the augmented reality avatar talk to you and have a conversation. That's something we're thinking about. But as far as like our like development, we're not working on developing any artificial intelligence right now. It's all just a lot of Unity development, really.
That's funny. I gotta share a story with you, Jacob and Randy. We had an AI event at our office last week, and they had a interactive chat bot that talked back to you, but the microphone was always on and it listened, so it'd pick up on. I yelled, "Hey Joe," to my friend to come over because I needed to talk to him, and all of a sudden the chatbot says, "Hey Joe, a song made popular by Jimi Hendrix in 1967." So now all of a sudden we start messing with this thing to see what it would do, and we were like, "Your turtle."
How long did it take to get to hate crime speech?
It did. No, we did.
Oh,
was listening. We were asking it questions and was listening to
As you
us.
say, like, Microsoft has had those issues.
That Microsoft chatbot,
they launched a chatbot and like took it down in like 2 days because it started getting a little
less. Yeah,
well, that's what they talk about with
crazy.
AI. AI is not the problem; it's the feed. Like, because it's going off. If it just hits Reddit, it turns into a cesspool of gloop in a minute. Like, it's just,
right. And then everyone's like, "Why are these robots terrible?" It's like, dude, because people are terrible, and you're training the robots on people.
So we would ask this thing like, your haircut, I hope you didn't pay for that haircut. And she goes, hair, style is objective. And it was like actually pretty astute as to what it would. And then I'm like, we started running out of stuff to ask. So I had it sing Smash Mouth All-Star.
Nice.
And I wanted to see if she would sing, and she didn't sing, but she's like, somebody once told me the world is rather, and she starts just reading it. And we were like, everyone in the room was just crying, laughing. And then, the one guy's like, "Hey, what should I have for lunch?" And she actually gave like 5 really good ideas, and I go, "Well, those sucked." And then she frowns and said, "Well, I'm sorry, my ideas weren't good enough for you. Maybe I can improve." And it was like really empathetic. It was like, it was a fantastic engine. I was like, I could have sat there all day. And like at one point we had like a crowd going. So I'm like Bob was bullying Mallory. That's what her name was.
I love that kind of thing too, because it's like, I feel like AI, when it's used that way, can be like a great stress relief tool, because you can just bully the heck out of it. And it's like nobody's getting hurt here. Like, you can just be mean to it and release your frustration, and it's just a robot.
Wanted to break it. Well, that's the thing. It's kind of.
Do you want Skynet? Because that's how you get
I was
Skynet.
about to say that's what happened in iRobot, and that's why everybody died. So
it's the guy with the hockey stick with the Boston Scientific robot. He's smacking the hockey stick. It's like, don't do it. Don't do it.
I love that video.
Don't do it. Well, the one that has the dubbed swear words over, that one's the fantastic one.
Have you seen the one? There was a was it Corridor Digital or something? There was like a very popular YouTube CGI channel that did a video like that, but then like the robots turned around and started beating the crap out of the people. And you should look it up. I don't remember what it was called, but it was really funny.
It's every one of my nightmares.
I'll put it in the show notes. So Jacob, you were telling us before the show that you are a home brewer.
Yes.
In your spare time.
Yeah, that's my that's one of my hobbies that I like to do.
Our tagline is Networking Detroit one beer at a time. So I think you have to tell us a little bit more about what you make and how much you make.
There we go. All right. Well, recently I haven't been able to make as much because I don't have a nice basement to brew in like I used to. But I've been brewing for, I guess it's going on like 5 or 6 years now. it's such a fun hobby. First of all, I can make beer way cheaper, and I make it in 5-gallon batches, so I can have a bunch of buddies over, and we can kill a keg. And it's kind of like making a recipe with any other sort of cooking or whatever you would do. You can customize all the ingredients to get whatever flavor profiles you want out of the beer. And I mean, the yeast, the hops, the grains, like every little aspect of it, even the water can totally change the flavor of the beer. So you can do some super crazy stuff. And if it doesn't work out, so what? Dump it and try again.
See, the people that I know that are brewers are like the most patient human beings, because I tried it once and it was hell on earth. My ADD fired in. I was sidetracked, and I got to clean this thing. Like,
you got to clean it like crazy. It takes
like surgery.
An average brew day. Like, I am lucky if I start brewing and finish 8 hours later.
It's surgery. Yeah. It's
wow.
There's so much to it. I'm like, you know what? It's kind of like my buddies that said they were going fishing, and I'm like, you realize they sell fish at the store. That's kind of my brewing career ended with, like, I'm just going to go buy a 12er. We're good.
That's what most people do, and that's great. Like, I totally understand why that's most people's preference, but I'm a weird person who wants to customize like every little aspect of the beer and then get people to try it. I've made some weird shit. Pickle beers, barbecue sauce mead. You can get really creative, make some people try some nasty stuff if you want.
Testament to your personality. Hats off to you. Jacob, we're going to cut you loose. Appreciate the time. Jacob Ennis, the Center for Simulation and Innovation, will have all his contact info and links in show notes. Definitely appreciate the time. That's going to wrap things up for this IT and the D show. On behalf of Bob and Randy, do us all a favor. Drink up your drinks. Get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.